mini lecture is an introduction to the population shift we're seeing in many parts of the world. Using various types of graphs and graphics, we'll take a look at how aging is not only a phenomenon in the US, but throughout the world. The percentage of the population aged 65 and older will change dramatically between the years of 2015 and 2050, and has changed dramatically in the years leading up to 2015. In this graphic from the United States Census, you can see that in 2015, the top map, much of North America, for example, had populations with 14 to 21% of older adults. And we're defining older adults for this as those 65 and older. Except for Mexico, which in yellow is relatively young as a country still at this point. Africa is also fairly young in 2015, with less than 7% of the population being over the age of 65. In 2050, however, you see a lot more dark blue, indicating that the populations of those countries are 21 to 28% older adults, and you can even see a few countries in purple, meaning that 28 or more percent of that population is over the age of 65. Notice that there aren't any countries in which the color got lighter between 2015 and 2050. They're all getting darker, meaning the entire world is aging. When we say a population is aging, it's not just about sheer numbers of older adults. In this bar graph, which represents older adults in the US, you can see that both the numbers, the left side is millions of people that are older than 65, or a percentage of the population, which is on the right side. Okay, so we know that we'll have more older adults and that the percentage will also increase. However, to get an even better picture of what a population looks like and how this will impact our country, we have to go even deeper. The tool that we use to examine the distribution of ages in a population is called a population pyramid. This different kind of bar graph gives us a great picture of all parts of our population. The left side in blue are males, the right side in red is females, and then along the bottom, you can see numbers in millions. In the middle column, you can see age ranges. What do you see in this graph? Hopefully you're beginning to notice that there are fewer people at the top, or the oldest age ranges. You might also notice a couple of bulges in the population. The one closer to the top contains a group called the baby boomers, and these are people that are born between 1946 and 1964. There were a lot of them. They started to turn 65 about 5 years ago. You can see another bulge in the 20 to 34-year-old age group. The last thing to take note of is the length of the bars at the very bottom. They're not growing, they're shrinking. So that means that people are having fewer and fewer children. So let's see what this looks like in 2030. Again, we're in the United States here. We're starting to see that this figure is looking a lot less like a pyramid and is getting more rectangular, at least until you get to the older ages. So why does this matter? Well, imagine cutting this graph into 3 sections. The first section would contain all of the people from age 0 to 17. The second section would be the 18 to 65-year-olds, and the third section would be the 66-year-olds to the top. So the bottom section of children and the top section of older adults, and let's just assume that people still retire at age 65, those are the people needing more resources, like Social Security and Medicare. The people in the middle are the ones working and paying into the system to provide these programs. So if we have more and more people at the top, as people live longer, and fewer children growing up to be part of the middle section of working adults, what will happen? Less support, as you may have guessed. In case you were curious, in the United States, this is what our population distribution is projected to look like in 2050. It continues to get more and more into a rectangular shape, which it's also been called a beanpole shape. Interestingly, we're not the only country that has a population pyramid that looks like this into the future. Many developed countries do. On the other hand, there are some very interesting population distributions in other countries around the world. And don't just take my word for it. You should do a little exploring yourself. Perhaps look up your country of origin or check out the population of a place you've always wanted to visit. Here's the website, and once you go there, you go to the Select Report box. It's circled in red in this slide. Once you get there, use the drop-down menu to choose Population Pyramid Graph. And then you can check the years that you want to see. If you want to see more than 1 year, like I like to compare perhaps a year in the past, the present year, and a year into the future, hold down the control button and click on the multiple years that you want to see. Same goes for the countries that you want to look at. You'll notice you can choose either individual countries, which are circled in yellow on the right hand of the screen, or you can look at regions or maybe groups of more developed or less developed countries in the menu below that. So let's take a look at one of the countries. Check out Germany, and you can see the population pyramids from 2010, 2030, and 2050. What do you notice? Do you notice any similarities with the population pyramids from the United States? Here's India's population pyramids. Again, do you see any differences or similarities between this and the population pyramids that we just saw for Germany and the United States? And also think about what might the shape of this population mean for India. We talked a little bit about what population pyramid changes mean for the United States in terms of caregiving and the support of the working group versus children and non-working older adults. But there are lots of other implications. And here we have another interesting thing going on in Japan. We call this negative population growth. There are fewer and fewer babies being born, and so the age distribution of their population looks like an inverted or upside-down pyramid. So what will the effect be of this negative population growth be on Japan, especially in terms of available caregivers for older adults? So again, you can look up as many countries as you want and see which populations tend to look similar in their population distribution over the years and which have some interesting other kinds of population things going on, and try to think about what that means for the population in terms of how it will be able to support its younger people, its working people, and its older people. So let's turn to a little bit of a different topic within demography, and that, again, is the growth of the older population in the U.S., but let's look at it by gender. And I'm actually going to read a little bit of information from a great article. The website is at the bottom of the slide, and I really encourage you to look at it and read it in full. But this article was mentioning that today, women are outliving men in every country in the world. That's right. According to the latest U.S. report, life expectancy for the ladies is 81.2 years compared to 76.4 years for men. But even though the fact that women outliving men has become widely accepted as the norm, the study discussed in this article shows that this difference in survival rate is actually a relatively recent phenomenon beginning just in the 20th century. Focusing on mortality in adults, that's death rates, over the age of 40, the team analyzed historical data for more than 1,700 individuals born between 1800 and 1935 in 13 different developed countries. The researchers found that while mortality rates decreased for both sexes throughout the 19th and 20th century, meaning we're living longer, female death rates began decreasing a whopping 70% faster than those of males after 1880. Why was this happening? You might have some guesses. The study found that as infectious disease prevention, improved diets, and other positive health behaviors were adopted by people born during the 1800s and early 1900s, death rates for everybody plummeted, but women began reaping the longevity benefits at a much faster rate. The biggest culprit for the surge of death rates for men? Heart disease. Even after accounting for deaths due to smoking, cardiovascular disease appears to still be the leading cause of most preventable deaths in men over 40. What's the other reason? lifestyle. The increasing rates of cardiovascular disease in men is attributed to health-related behaviors, in particular smoking, which we mentioned already, and a diet high in both calories and saturated fats. While there's little evidence of biology's roles in this mortality gap between the sexes, there still is a possibility that men may experience an inherent biological vulnerability to cardiovascular disease. It's not that men are subject to the dangers that women are immune to, though, after all, across their lifetime, women and men have a risk of heart disease, but you can never fully account for genetics. So again, a lot of what happens with mortality rates comes down to lifestyle choices. So that doesn't fully perhaps explain the difference between the mortality rates of men and women, but it does point to the importance of lifestyle choices, even more so than genetics. Now, because of the fact that women tend to outlive men, aging has become largely a woman's phenomenon, and this has been referred to using a phrase called the feminization of aging. Women, at least the heterosexual ones, tend to outlive their husbands, and this current population of older women has faced increased rates of poverty after losing a spouse. This is going to be covered more in detail in another mini lecture, but as my colleagues know, I use every opportunity possible to include a photo of my favorite Golden Girls. So the next thing I wanted to show you is, again, the growth of the older population. There are two populations that are growing at even a faster rate than the general older population over 65. And those are people who are age 85 and older, as well as centenarians, or people 100 and over. Although number-wise, the United States has the most centenarians, Japan and Italy have the most when compared with the entire population. So, what's the secret for these growing numbers of older adults? How can we not only live longer, but maintain quality of life when doing so? There are several areas around the world with higher concentrations of centenarians, and Dan Buettner visited these communities. He's a journalist that used to work, or maybe still does, for the National Geographic. But he visited these places to find out the secret of why they have so many older adults over 100 still living quality, active, independent lives. His book, Blue Zones, describes the lifestyle secrets of these people so that you can make positive choices to live a long, healthy, high-quality life.